Thinking of AI not as a replacement for yourself or your own thoughts, but as a partner to work with you is a really, really important distinction. We are working together on this document. It is not just going to have it write it and then go off like some people do. We're going to work together on this. We're going to solve this problem together. It's a much better way of thinking through that.
Hi there, I'm Prakash, CEO of Xano.com, and this is Futureproof. In this episode, I'm joined by Tony Casparro, Senior Staff Software Engineer at OpenAI, where he's helping shape the future of ChatGPT. Tony has spent his career at the intersection of scale and design, leading UI and platform engineering at Netflix, founding multiple startups, and now building on the front lines of AI. Tony, really great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time. Also, a fellow slow neighbor. It's great to have you also in town. Thanks so much for agreeing to do this conversation.
I'm happy to be here. Let's talk.
Awesome. I love it. Well, why don't we start with some background? Maybe share with us a little bit about what you've done in the past and what you're doing today.
Yeah, I've kind of had an interesting history as far as working on the back end first. So doing a lot of database management, starting at Cisco Systems, moving over to biotech at Amgen. Oh, excuse me. But really kicking off my career when I moved to Box to do enterprise software, right? Really thinking through what are the needs of B2B customers. How do we make great software that's easy to use, good for management observability. And then doing a wild swing to Netflix. So after enterprise for a few years, I really wanted to get back in the consumer space. And that journey was really about how do we teach the world what streaming is? This is, of course, 12 years ago now. So what is streaming? How does it work? How do you even think about having an entire library at your disposal and figuring out what to watch next? So after 10 years at Netflix, just building Netflix.com, doing infrastructure work there as well. I am now here at OpenAI. I work on ChatGPT. Right now, we're building out commerce, and we're also doing new work with, excuse me, like rich responses, so that the information is not just a wall of text, but it actually has meaningful layout, responsiveness to what you're actually looking for. And so that's what I work on every day.
Awesome. So exciting. And I definitely want to dive into all of that. But I first maybe wanted to start with your time at Netflix. Kind of what a pivotal and interesting time when you joined Netflix, kind of in this world where people didn't realize what streaming was. Talk to us about some of like the kind of what the paradigm was like at the time in terms of like the concept of what it meant to stream something and some of the affordances and things that you had to think through at Netflix in order to like usher in this new era of streaming on the internet.
Yeah, I had built my own servers before this, and so it was interesting, that I had been used to this kind of new world for a while, but like showing other people who were, still popping DVDs into the mailbox and then into their players, or a little bit using, Apple iTunes at the time to purchase things one off. This was a new world. The same with Spotify when they kind of introduced people to the idea that you have access to everything. And you're like, okay, where's my music? Well, your music is all the music. And there's this concept of like, okay, but how do I actually use this? Well, how do I actually, enable this to work for me? So same thing with streaming, right? We first of all had to show people that like, here is what this movie is about, right? And doing a lot of experimentation on like showing which kind of images for the particular users and custom tailoring it to their needs. Do we show them a wall of text about what the movie is about, or do we show them just a few quick words as far as this is exciting and thrilling and whatnot? Using instead of static assets, like actually moving assets, showing trailers in line and things like that. And overcoming a lot of assumptions people had about how this was going to work. I remember going to a lot of tests where we would put the product in front of people and we'd be watching behind a two-way mirror and they'd be afraid to click on something. Why are you afraid? What's going on? Why are you afraid to click on this? Because it's going to charge me. And there was this
Mm.
idea that, the world was piecemeal. You had to pay per view on everything you did. And the idea that it was all available. You could just click on it and it would start playing with one single cost per month. We had to educate and overcome a lot of barriers that we take for granted. So it was a lot of interesting learnings. We did a lot of experiments that worked and a lot that did not work. some things where we assumed too much about the user's journey as to why were they at Netflix.com. Was it to watch? Was it to actually learn about a movie? Was it to figure out something to watch later? And really understand and make a great journey from no matter what people were doing on the site.
So, I think there's so many kind of parallels in terms of like what you're doing at OpenAI with ChatGPT. Before we touch on that, I would love to understand if there's one key learning that you still take with you today from your days at Netflix, what would that be?
I think it's very naive, but we often think like, well, everyone does this the same way that I do, and
Mhm.
it's simply not true. You think of something as simple as scrolling a page. It turns out there's many different ways to scroll a page. Some people go to the right and they click on the scroll bar and they drag it down. Some people use the arrow keys. Some people are using voice commands. There's millions of different, well, not millions. There's a lot of different permutations for how things people do things. And when you build an interface and you're assuming everyone thinks the way I do about how to navigate through this or what my intentions are, you're going to miss a lot of people. And so this is something that companies that have a lot of exposure do really well is they know here's how to make it super accessible. A great example of this, somebody else told me, is a steering wheel. Imagine if a steering wheel was always set and you had to grip it a certain way. It wasn't a wheel, it was like two handles. It only works for the way that one person thinks. But steering wheels, by their design, allow for people that drive with it on the top of it, on the bottom of it, on the side. It works for all the different use cases. And something as simple as a wheel, it can be a beautiful illustration of how it works for everyone.
That's really a fascinating correlation. And as I kind of alluded to, like really kind of poignant to how or the work that you are doing at OpenAI, especially with ChatGPT, because it's a similar parallel because you're also designing in this new paradigm shift where people have access to everything, right? Maybe not a media library, but now the world's kind of information at their fingertips in a way that had never been accessible before, like getting to the answer versus searching through the sea of blue links. And
Hmm.
there's an input box now that serves many different types of people. Like I use it. My 82-year-old dad uses it. My sister uses it. My daughter uses it. It's crazy that you have so many different people interrogating and asking, ChatGPT to do things for them. So when you think about the learnings that you've had at Netflix and that same paradigm, how have you guys tried to approach that not problem, but I guess opportunity of serving so much of the world through this interface called ChatGPT?
It's a really hard problem, right? As you said, it's a super general processor. It can do all kinds of different tasks, and you really have to kind of figure out how to meet people where they're at. What do they need help with? Is it relationship advice? Is it building an essay for something? Is it researching something on the web? And trying to make it meaningful and accessible to them. We've made great strides. As were before, there was a lot of buttons on the bottom of the toolbar. We've made great strides towards you just type whatever you want, and the model is going to figure out which engine do I need to use for this. Do I need to use a thinking model? Do I need to use a web searching real time model, whatnot? And allowing the brain of the model to choose which direction it will take you. There are, of course, hints that you can give it if you need to say, like, this is a deep learning task I'd like you to do. But overall, we were relying on that model for that contextualization. And then in addition, with the response that actually comes back, giving you meaningful pivot points, right? So that if you are looking for real time information, you can pivot to like, okay, great, now show me the stock ticker. Or if you're looking for writing a document, okay, great, open this in a canvas. Help. Let's figure this out together and work on this. And so it really is trying to figure out as soon as possible what is the intent of the user, what are they trying to do, and then with the response, be a really meaningful. Don't just show them a wall of text, showing them really contextual information about how they want to perceive this and give them those pivot points to then take the conversation to the next level. We've got some great stuff coming up for this that really show off these pivot points. But this is key to saying, to showing, or with hints, showing the user the capability of the product without being overbearing and showing them a wall of text or buttons.
Yeah, I think even in coordinating this, we had to make sure that you got through a crazy amount of work, obviously culminating in just the recent developer day that happened. It was kind of an amazing moment actually for me to watch because I really feel like ChatGPT has evolved in something that was maybe considered like as chat interface and tool to more of a platform and to what you're speaking about, giving people more tailored contextual experiences rather than just a wall of text is something that we can just see the world going to. tell me, like, as someone that works on the interface, what are some of the key challenges that people not may not necessarily understand or think through that you have to think about in terms of presenting that type of information with context and tailored and personalized to the person that's searching?
What's interesting is, especially in this world where the model is trained on a lot of information, and yet there's a lot of real-time information that it can have access to. Real-time information in terms of what's available on the web or tools out there, all these new MCP servers and whatnot. And so one of the complexities is, how do you orchestrate giving the user a fast response, and at the same time, basically in parallel, let me go talk to the stock widget, let me go talk to the weather widget, let me go talk to this MCP server and bring this back. And so some of the complexities of the UI are, how do you show the information that you have so far? How do you show the user that you're still bringing in extra information, or that you're processing something really important, and make it not feel slow and janky, right? Because the power is that it can build you a great response. But if it feels like, man, nothing's happening, I don't even know I'm waiting anymore, that feels bad. And so what
Yeah.
we do is something called the chain of thought. So the chain of thought is, as it's thinking through whether that is real-time information or talking to other servers, we're showing you little snippets. Hey, I'm talking to that server over there right now. I'm gathering the real-time weather information. And that's giving the user insight into what's happening behind the scenes in terms of a thinking model that's interacting with the world, and then building that useful response in turn.
Yeah, that orchestration and kind of giving a sense to the user around what ChatGPT is doing is just it when it works really well, it just feels like really seamless and elegant. But I can imagine how much thought goes behind it. One of the things that we've talked about before is kind of the most underutilized tool within ChatGPT, and we've talked about it being deep research, or that was the answer at the time when we were chatting. And since you told me that, I actually have been using it a lot more. Even though, like, I think I'll be in a conversation, and it will obviously try to optimize for quick answers, but I'll explicitly say, look, for this one, I want you to think deeply about it. I'll make sure to tell it to go into deep research, and it gives me like something really, really thorough. And I'm almost giving it the freedom to take a little bit more time to give me like a really thorough answer. Do you see more people starting to use ChatGPT this way? Because I think this is what I'm imagining. You tell me if this is true. A lot of people are shifting their behavior from traditional search to ChatGPT, but they're still using ChatGPT like search, right? They're still typing in like maybe piecemeal words and not necessarily using it how it is meant to be and how it can best be utilized. Tell us what you're seeing and kind of the dynamics around like deep research as a feature and the best way to utilize ChatGPT.
Yeah, so the deep research is one of those hints that I was talking about. It's in the toolbar where you can say, this is how I want you to answer this question. And deep research specifically means take as long as you want. I don't want a quick answer. I want you to be very thorough, go through lots of sources, take your time, and get back to me with a really deep, full response. And so it is one of my favorite features, especially for shopping for something and comparing, a bunch of different review sites or models. For travel advice, it can be really, really thoughtful instead of giving you an answer very quickly. When you ask about user behavior, though, it turns out people still want something very, very quickly. They don't want to wait. They want the answer right away. And so what we've kind of come up with in terms of the UI is kind of a bifurcated mode. So it will start to say, if it is going to take a while for something, like I do need to do some research, whatnot, there is a skip button. You can say, I don't care. Just show me what you got right now. And that allows people the flexibility to be like, this is how I want my answer. And so I can't say for sure like what the adoption is like on some of our other features like deep research. But people are still very much in the mindset that they want it quick, they want it fast, and they want it correct. And we are working as hard as we can to make sure that that is the path forward.
Yeah, I love that bifurcated mode where it's like, hey, look, and I think it says something like thinking deeper for a better answer or something, and then you have the ability to be like, nope, nope, it's all good, just give it to me now. And I think that's the hard piece, right? Kind of balancing that speed, that AI speed that people have come to expect, with the thoroughness that something like a deeper research can offer. I want to shift gears a little bit. You are a staff engineer. You have been developing in some capacity for your entire career. Uh, I think the audience might be curious to know how you are leveraging AI in your day to day to develop software at OpenAI, and some of the core benefits that you've seen and things that you might have to like supervise or kind of still be aware of that are still kind of evolving in terms of like the landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to think of AI is as an assistant, right? It is there to help you with your tasks. And so when I get into the office in the morning, what do I do is I look at my plate and I go, what can I offload to an AI so that I can work in parallel? So some requests might come in for some code changes, architecture changes, whatnot. I can muddle through those and go do everything in a serial manner, but I have the ability now to say, let me offload some of these tasks. So we have Codex as one of our AI coding agents. It's available to everyone as well. And it's pretty phenomenal when it has access to your code base to say, this is the change that it can even read, of course, now like linear tasks and Slack messages. And you can say, here's the context of the issue, come up with a solution for it. Now, like all AI things, it may not be perfect at start, but it can actually give you quite a bit of leverage in thinking through opportunities so that when you come back to the task, you can be like, well, that's pretty clever, but let's change this, rewire this. Perfect. Now we're done. And so, as opposed to me working, like I said, serially in the morning, I'm thinking across many different verticals at the same time. I've also got AI, of course, built into my IDE, which is my coding interface. And now it's like, applying some formatting or markdown or just kind of threading through some variables and whatnot. And I can say, just finish this off for me. And so that allows me to have a much more productive day in terms of focusing on the bigger picture tasks, and then sharing the work with an AI to take care of the more kind of menial stuff to like just kind of thread through. And so that's for work, and then also for doing research and things like that for other things that we have going on at work. It used to be a world like where you said, like, okay, I'm looking for this new state management. Let me go to Google. Okay, I see a bunch of links. Let me go read through these articles and spend half my day doing that. Or I can say, hey, here's another task for you, not Codex, but ChatGPT. Go research the latest state management to make sure the information is up to date, bring me a report, build me a spreadsheet that I can review. And that is, once again, not doing all the work for me. It's in a supervised way where it's helping me and assisting me, giving me a collection of information that I can then use to make my next decisions and go deeper as I need to.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, like, there's going to be developers and technical builders listening to this, and one of the things that you said was kind of really interesting, just in terms of like, at the beginning of your day, you're kind of figuring out how can you leverage this assistant to take care of some things, to do some research for you while you focus on maybe the higher order bit. For the people that are listening, how do you structure that planning process around what you can delegate to the assistant and to leveraging AI for versus what you need your attention on?
Yeah, I mean, so as a UI engineer, I do a lot of visual testing. And it's something where our like Codex is extremely good at like backend coding right now, and it's still developing its chops in terms of UI coding and testing those UI changes. How do they work? How do they work for accessibility? How does it work on a fast connection, slow connection? There's a lot of things we need to consider when we're building user interfaces. And so some of those tasks, I might have it like, for example, you start building this for me. For example, I was building an animation the other day, and I knew it was not going to hit the animation correctly, but I was like, there's going to be an animation that occurs when somebody clicks this button. I need you to pop open this, do this, use this variable. And it did a pretty good job, but at least it was a start for me to be like a jumping off point for my PR that I was going to eventually write. And so when I come in the morning and I'm thinking about those tasks, I am thinking in terms of like, how would I approach this problem? Okay, these are the steps I would take. Let me give those to the agent and have the agent take care of it for me. If that is too complex, I go, I can't even fathom in my head what this is going to look like. I just have no idea what the outcome is going to be. I don't know the correct way to do the performance of this, whatnot. I'll take those on and start on that journey because it's just an unknown. So to clarify for short, if it's a known end state that I want, once again, comparing things across different websites, doing research and analysis, whatnot. There's a known outcome. I want to find the best this. That's a great choice for it. But when you're really ideating, you're not sure what it's going to look like. You're maybe working with partners and stakeholders, and you're like, we don't know what this is going to look like yet. That's more the state where I take ownership and control to like do the human stuff, talk to people, get feedback, and
Yeah,
figure that out
I,
together.
that makes sense. Talk to me a little bit about where you feel like AI is not quite there yet, but you're excited to see it evolve so you can take advantage of leveraging it kind of in your day to day.
Yeah, we've made great strides towards orchestrating tasks, right? So this is the idea. Like a year ago, if you said, change this piece of code and structure the state in this new way, it would have just started spitting out code, right? It wouldn't really think through its tasks. And so something we've told these coding agents now is develop a set of steps that you're going to take, right? I'm going to do this, think through these, think through the side cases and edge considerations here. and then start coding it. And you get much better results when you have it think through a process to follow first. In terms of not being quite there, the UI piece is tricky, right? Because you need to test across different browsers, you need to test across different connections. Um, Also, AIs don't really know what a beautiful animation looks like. They don't know how it feels to a user. That's something very visceral where you go like, it should feel this quick and move this. And, especially when you're doing coordinating multiple animations in the same way, you need that to feel really good together. And so it doesn't have a good feel for that just yet. Even in terms of the user interface, I've experimented with a lot of our own tools and competitors in terms of like what makes a great UI. And they guess and they look okay, but it's kind of using just random examples. I wouldn't say it's a great UI designer yet. There's something really magical about the way humans think through how a user interface is going to flow, and how that's going to work. And so I think those are areas for opportunity. Backend stuff is getting very, very good at. If we go to a world in the future where backend code is not even a code box anymore, it's just a black box where you say, hey, this is the inputs of the API I want, and these are the outputs I expect. I don't care what the code looks like inside, as long as it's quick. Just go be a black box, and we may end up in a world there where we have black box, inputs and outputs for
Got it.
backend servers.
Talk to me a little bit about how, from a development standpoint, you think about like security and control over what can sometimes be the black box, whether it's front end or back end. How you think about that in your day to day, because I feel like that's probably the supervision part that you're talking about, making sure that you're in the loop and making sure that it's doing the right things. But in your day to day, how are you kind of implementing that and thinking about it as an engineer?
Are you asking specifically like how I use the security controls or how we as a
How
company
is
think
you
about those
you as a
controls?
company think about those controls in your day-to-day development?
Absolutely. So it's person in the loop, right? The AI should never have access to do what could be considered dangerous tasks on its own, right? Executing, arbitrary code and things like that. It will ask you and prompt you, is it okay if I run this? Here is the exact command I'm going to run, and make sure that the human is always in
Mhm.
control of those tasks. As we start to get an exposure into the world of MCPs, same thing. We want to make sure that those checkpoints are there. So there's human in the loop. And so that is not often running on its own. As our developers, however, build their own products, we're encouraging them to also put those same safeguards in place. However, there might be safely guarded loops where you go like, hey, it's going to generate images. I already have these moderation controls in place. I know this is going to be safe, and you can have it run that with that oversight, as long as a developer or somebody has already made sure that there's a safe path for it to take.
So I want to go into just maybe some practical takeaways for people that are, might be building a new project, and trying to figure out the best way to leverage AI. You feel like you've got all these vibe coders and they're, building applications very quickly. You have people that are leveraging AI alongside of themselves in a code base. But from a chat GPT perspective, for a new builder that is trying to think of developing something new into the world, or even for a product owner in a company that's trying to make something new within their organization, just in terms of a mental model of how they should be thinking about it and leveraging AI, what recommendations might you have in order to get started in the most efficient way possible?
It is interesting because we have Codex internally. It has access to our entire code base. And so we've had people, that's always a great starting point. If you have an existing product, you give it access to your GitHub repo, it
Mhm.
knows everything about your code. And when you ask it a question about it, it can efficiently use the current styling and permission sets and plans that you use for existing code, and then it can do the augmentation, or adding new features, whatnot. That turns out to be decently well. We've had people that are product managers, they ask for those changes, they send it to like a developer and with the change set. The developer can then do slight modifications or whatnot as needed, but it does help the process along because usually that process is the developer going to the person describes what they want, they go back and forth. And it's nice if, the person can just describe everything they want up front and get that result. In terms of like starting new code bases, that is a tricky one, 0 to 1 with a new product. I personally wanted to do like, some more app development and whatnot. Um, 0 to 1 is always a hard proposition, right? Because you have to build out some servers or some developer toolkits on your local machine. I can't speak to any websites that currently do like a great job. I'm sure they're out there. But it's a great opportunity because there are so many people that are vibe coding small applications. It'd be fantastic if you could use one of these to start building up, whether that's a website or an app that you're going to release to the App Store and get you up and running quickly. So I guess do some research. I can't recommend any particular ones. Codex is great though for
Yeah,
existing code
that's
bases.
awesome. And then, just in terms of like, uh, you know, ChatGPT is such a challenge for all of the reasons that we've been speaking about, just in terms of the UI UX paradigms that need to be introduced. I'm curious if you have thoughts around any UI or UX patterns that you will see either disappear or be introduced into this new world of new interfaces that we're entering into.
So that's a great question. That's right in my wheelhouse. So, as your users may not, or your listeners may or may not know, we released something called third-party apps inside of ChatGPT just this Monday. So this is the world now where you can talk to ChatGPT, and instead of ChatGPT saying, "Here is a link to Zillow, go like click out to them and leave the site," you can now talk to Zillow or these other apps that we partner with to start inside of ChatGPT. So that means they're creating custom UI elements. ChatGPT and these third parties are now working together to build visualizations. And that turns out to be extremely powerful. Another example is Spotify, right? Hey, I'm coming up for a playlist. We're having an 80s party. Make me a great playlist. It could list a bunch of songs, but it'd be great if it could interface with your Spotify account, build you the playlist, and then you're done, as opposed to you having to go add those songs manually or whatnot. And so bringing these apps together to be controlled inside of ChatGPT is going to be a really interesting new world. Excuse me. And then, of course, on the other side of it, we have these agents that you can build into your current sites that go backwards, right? So now you are the main app. ChatGPT is now embedded inside of your application. Now these two can interface as well. Um, it's going to be a really interesting world in terms of how people think about, branding and app stores. I mean, you can see a world now where if these UIs are so, or like chat agents are so powerful enough to build, like integrate with third parties and even build interfaces on the fly, you could start to see app
Mhm.
stores go away. Why would I have to go like search my phone and find this one app if this other app can just do it all for me, right? It can generate the UI, generate my feed, whatever I need, and build it in a custom way. And so you can see a long tail road down here where, there is no more searching for apps. There's no more looking for context. You can just interface with your device in whatever way you want, probably through speaking and or text, and just say, "Show me the weather for today." It doesn't have to open an app. It doesn't have to do anything else. It can render a weather widget for you. Tell me how my finances are doing, like cross-reference my portfolio and see what I need to do for my taxes. And it's generating
Yeah.
stuff on the fly. And so there's a really powerful new world out there for those that are thinking through how does AI and my application fit together to create a single united world as opposed to I got to get
Yeah.
traffic to my site. Um, and it's going to be real interesting to
I
see how that
totally
comes
agree.
out
I was
together.
actually talking to a previous guest about this, how like the front end, in terms of the way we're used to digesting, where I download a singular application or I go to a web application, is changing. Like because the more people interface with tools like ChatGPT and get those answers, yeah, the nature of how companies will express their brand through like this new apps SDK and otherwise is going to just fundamentally change. So we're kind of entering this era of like personalization. And another thing that he brought up that I thought was fascinating was a potential world of like ephemeral applications. Because sometimes we build an app for a purpose, but once that purpose is done, especially with how fast we can create applications, like it may be like purpose built for this one thing, and then it may go away. I'm curious, have you thought through anything like that? Just even outside of what you're doing at OpenAI, but just personally, how do you think about the world of digesting information, application development, and how we're going to utilize or interface with businesses in the future?
Yeah, it's funny. Netflix did a lot of kind of one-off applications that were short-lived. We were doing experimentations inside for, does it matter if we show a different image to a customer for a movie than this other image, right? And we would do these experiments where we would have an idea like that, and we would need a UI that was just, ephemeral. It was just going to be there for a while we evaluated the efficacy of this product, and we would spin those up all the time. And that process was, very cumbersome at the time. And now we have AI to help generate some of those for us. And it's very, very nice. In terms of like, at ChatGPT as well, it is amazing because when you think of like what chat can do now, it more so like, especially with my team, more than just a wall of text, right? We can do tables, we can do interactive tables, images, videos, and things like that. You're getting to a world where, like, yeah, I can create. I'm learning something. Let's say I'm a student, right? I'm having a real trouble with understanding cute and obtuse angles. Build me a quick, interface, a program that I can learn this from. And it goes, boom, it just generated it for you within seconds. And you go, oh, I see how the angles work. Now it's interactive and it shows you and it was custom to you. And how that is better than kind of what we have today is, today somebody may have already generated that tool and you have to go to the website to find it. But this is built inside of chat. It already has the conversation in context. And it probably even knows that you like
Mhm.
Minecraft as well. And it made the tool fun and interactive, like, because you know Minecraft. And it's building and creating these ephemeral tools that are unique to you, to your learning style. I think it's going to be such a huge boon for, children learning in schools, or also even, adults that are learning new concepts every day, especially in this tech world. Like, okay, I know about this. Teach me about that, and it can do it in a way that's really relevant to you. And so, I'm excited about those quick new interfaces and tools that it will be able to generate. We're not quite there yet, but
Yeah, for
it's going to
sure.
be
I
great.
cannot wait for that. You kind of touched on something that I've been thinking about a lot, just even with my own personal usage. And that's literacy, right? Like I think the amazing thing about something like a ChatGPT is I'm able to deeply kind of think through with or sharpen my thoughts around something by just interfacing with it. Like I'll be driving and kind of using the voice feature and having a conversation, and I don't feel embarrassed to be like, "Can you explain that again?" Like I'm like 8 years old, please. But it really, really has helped me clarify a lot. On the other side of things, I've found myself like, ChatGPT is so good at, generating, for example, email responses or even things around structuring things for my board deck that I'm like, I don't want to sacrifice kind of that skill that I have of doing that myself. I feel like there's like trying to give it too much and do too much for you and losing kind of that ability to shape it yourself. And then also kind of leveraging it to like help sharpen your thoughts and like from my personal point of view, using it appropriately. Like that's like the highest and best use for it. I'm curious how you
Yeah.
personally think about that, right? That spectrum of like handle it for me versus using it in a way that's productive and doesn't take away from your uniqueness and the value that you provide to the world.
It's an excellent question, especially as we're using it more and more for everyday tasks. Somebody has coined this as
Mhm.
cognitive offloading, where something that was challenging for you, that's stressed an ability that you have, you're now offloading to the AI. I have caught myself sometimes doing things where I go, I should be able to figure this out. It's a multiplication problem or whatnot. Like, let me do this. And it's important to keep in mind that, as humans, stretching our mind and keeping it sharp is really, really important. Using your literacy tools and using your abilities is really important. So, thinking of AI not as a replacement for yourself or your own thoughts, but as a partner to work with you is a really, really important distinction. We are working together on this document. It is not, I'm not just going to have it write it and then go off like some people do. We're going to work together on this. We're going to solve this problem together. It's a much better way of thinking through that. And so being careful to not tip that too much in the favor where you're not stretching and utilizing your brain as much as you should, and remembering that that's really important for you. The using your brain and stretching it every day is critical to staving off a lot of
Yeah,
diseases later on in life.
totally. And I think just the kind of key thing that you said there is making sure you're working together and learning together alongside of it. Because I think for me, at least, that has been kind of the best use of it. And I caught myself once where I was like trying to have it like answer everything for me. Because like when you have this kind of magic thing, you're just like, oh my god, I'm just going to use it for everything. And then I ended up, I
Right.
remember copying a response to like I had mostly written the message, but like I just relied on it ChatGPT to kind of finish it up. But then I pasted it, and it pasted also the okay, here's like an updated response that maintains your tone and everything in the like a Slack message that I had sent, and it caused me to pause and be like, okay, did I
Hmm.
really need to do that? No, probably not. But like I was, it's so good that like I had started to kind of go in a way that me personally, I wanted to kind of co-create and learn alongside with it. So I feel like I've gotten into a good balance, but we'll see as things
A great example of this is a power tool. I remember, my dad taught me, growing
yeah,
up how to use a saw, right? And like, the pain that it was. And using power tools is a whole other ball game. But you have to pay attention. You have to really make sure that you're in
yeah,
control of that product. Otherwise, it can really hurt you. And so that is the same way I approach AI, right? Like it is a tool that I use, but I need to make sure that I always have
totally.
control over it.
As we start to close, just one more question here, just on something that you had mentioned, which is like, we talked about kind of the age of like this new interface, this personalization, and the AI or ChatGPT being able to like tailor things from a number of different data sources together to give the user the exact right thing. If I'm a business today and I'm thinking about the interfaces that I'm going to design. I'm starting an application or I'm trying to expose my business logic in a meaningful way. How would you recommend thinking about that? Like from the interfaces that they're creating to their integrations with AI applications. Like where would you recommend that they start to make sure that they're future proofing themselves?
So if we're talking about like a company that's making things for consumers, first of all, most people are starting to go to this role of using voice or text to describe what they want, right? So if they come to your site, if you're having them navigate through a lot of, wizards or menus and whatnot, people are really coming to this world to expect like, here's what I need to do. Like, you give me a couple options or, allow me to use natural language to tell you what I want, and give them that approach through their site, right? Making people learn how your tool works and the complexity of that. Maybe there's a place for that, but most people are expecting now for the UI to be tailored to them instead, and not the other way around. And when you talk to business customers now, really making sure that you have excellent documentation, you have the ability to search and ask questions in it. Developers get very very frustrated when they can't see a lot of good examples or interactive tutorials or ask good questions of the documentation. These are kind of now table stakes for people coming in to work with your tool, and so ensuring that that is really primed and ready to go. I'm sure there's third parties out there that offer this as a service to set those guides up, but that is really really key. um, and so, yeah, that is kind of the way to win people over right now. People are expecting easy. They're expecting low friction. And if you're like, hey, you have to read all this and figure it out and muddle through what we've written, and we're not going to give you any guides or help for on it. It's like, well, you're just
Totally.
making it harder. You're using that friction. They might
Yeah,
go somewhere
I
else.
heard someone else kind of talk about there's kind of the user experience, but also kind of like an agent experience where you have to make sure that things are really well documented and described, just like you would for a human that like needs to understand all the elements of it. But when you have also a machine that's working alongside that human that can digest things much, much faster, it's really critical that your business logic, the way the rules and the processes that you want people and machines to understand are really well documented. So that makes a lot of sense. Tony, you've obviously been working on lots of different things. There was a dev day. I'd love to hear about what you have been working on lately. What's been keeping you occupied?
Yeah, so we just released commerce inside of ChatGPT. Previously, if you were looking for products like I'm looking for a new espresso machine or some shoes or whatnot, we would show you a list of links inside of there. The links are not ranked in any way; they're according to what you want. But there was no ability to actually check out inside of ChatGPT. So one of our first kind of like these new third-party products inside of ChatGPT is you can just hit the buy button and it appears in ChatGPT. So we work with Stripe as a partner to do all the credit card processing, and then we work with our merchant partners, that's like Etsy and Shopify right now, to do the transaction. So this is agentic shopping where we say, here, we'll collect the credit card information, we'll talk to the store, we'll orchestrate the transaction. It's done. We were involved in it only simply that we have a copy of the record so that you can easily access it from that chat conversation. But it was all done for you between these different partners. So they facilitated transactions, they did all the credit card encryption, whatnot, and then the shipping. And so this new world of, once again, inside of ChatGPT, you have control over things happening outside to even do your shopping for you.
That's amazing. So you're really just kind of a facilitation layer, and then you're like bringing these partners together to make sure that that transaction happens based on the user's intent.
Exactly. And it's great for the user. We've got the credit card information on file, nice and secure on our side. Well, Stripe side, really. And we're simply making it easy to hit that buy button inside of there and do all your shopping right there.
It's awesome. Just as we close, coming off of all the hecticness of developer day and everything that you're doing with OpenAI, if you had to leave the audience with one thing, just something that you would like them to invest more time doing, whether it be within ChatGPT or otherwise, what would that be?
Shockingly enough, it's simply give it a chance. I have many friends who are in this with me. They're co-engineers and whatnot, and there's still a lot of apprehension about, its access or controls or if it'll actually be useful. And honestly, give it a chance. It's the same way it was with Spotify. I remember people telling me like, "It's great, you have these, all the music at your fingertips," and I go like, "No, I like the way I've always done things with CDs. I don't want these new tools," and I didn't really give it a chance. Um, have it do something, where, it might take you a half hour to like search through something on the web or do some piece of research, or you're looking for, everybody's always looking for, a new product or, an espresso machine or whatnot. Have it do some of that task for you and see how well it can do at that task. If you're willing to have it wire up to your code base and just say, here's a task I was going to do today. Give it a try for me and see how it does. We've made these things trivial easy. Like you don't have to log in, you don't have to make an account. You can just go to chatgpt.com and just ask it a question and try it out. It is it couldn't be less friction along that path, and it might meaningfully make a difference into your day to day life. You might be able to focus on the higher level stuff that makes you a better engineer, leader in your workplace. You might be able to leverage your time better, and that makes you a better, effective person in your field, and all the more powerful
Tony,
for
what a
it.
perfect place to end. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you very much, Prakash. Appreciate it.